Hi there everyone, welcome to section 4 of Python for data engineering, and this is going to be the last section in the Python course. And in this particular section I'm going to talk about only three topics. The first one would be file operations, and we'll talk about file operations and do some hands-on. Then I'll also talk about multi-threading. So basically how do you run multiple threads parallelly in Python to exploit the availability of multiple CPUs in a machine. And finally, I'll close this section with debugging at a very high level. So basically, I'll tell you how to debug a Python program, not going into too much of details. And file operations are very, very important because whenever we work in the data engineering world using Python, most of the times we'll be dealing with files, we'll be dealing with databases and data warehouses. So you should know how to deal with files using Python. Now there are various libraries in Python that provide advanced file operations. For example, if you use PySpark, then PySpark actually has something called data frame, which is used to read files and put the records in a data frame. Same is the case with pandas also. Using pandas, you can create data frames, and it provides a little more advanced file manipulations. But as far as Python is concerned, the file operations are pretty basic, wherein it deals with CSV files and JSON files. Now, the first thing is that what are the various statements or operations that you can do with file? And the first one is open statement. So what is this open statement? It is used to open a file and read the records of the files. So whenever we use this statement, we open a file for either reading the contents or writing contents into the file. So the statement is like this: file equal to open, and followed by the name of the file and the mode. Now file name is typically the name of the file. It can be a CSV file or JSON file or a tab separated file, and the mode is mostly read or write. So I'm saying Python that I want to open the file in this particular mode. As you can see, this is also an object with some arguments passed to it. So the pointer would be in the file variable. So whenever you do it, behind the scenes, Python will make an operating system call and it will open the file for either read or write depending on the mode that we provide. Python does not do anything on its own. It uses the underlying operating system call itself to open files and read files. So once the file is opened, the records are stored in RAM again. So once the records are stored in RAM or in this particular variable, then we read those lines one by one or all at once. And let's say these are the records. We have only 4 records in this particular file. We have opened the file for reading. I have to read the records from this file. And the operation that is used is file.readLine. And what it does is it reads the lines one by one in a string. The read line is a method in this file object. So whenever we execute this read line method, we do not have to pass any argument, but it reads only one line and the output is stored in a variable which is of type string. So let's say the first line is read. Now if you have to read the second line, we'll have to execute the command again, meaning we'll have to execute file.readLine again. So if I execute it again, it will go to the next record, or the pointer will be moved to the next record. If I want to read one more record, I'll have to execute file.readLine again. So that is how it proceeds one after the other. Then the other method is file.readLines, and what it does is that all the records or all the rows in a file are read and put in a list. So each record would be one element in the list. So you can use this file.readLines. Then if you have to write some records, you can use file.write method, and here we'll have to pass certain argument, which is basically the data that we want to write to. And if you want to use file.write, you'll have to open the file in write mode. Now once all the operations are done, we'll have to close the file also. Otherwise it might create multiple problem because the statement might log the file for writing records, and if there are other operations which are trying to read the file or write to a file, then it would create a mutex log, or it will create a conflict. So that's why whenever you use this open statement, we have to make sure that we close the files using the dot close method. Let's see some hands-on. And I have two files here. One is a CSV file and the other one is JSON file. Each one of them has 1000 records. And what will I do is that I will write a program to read from individual files and write to a new file. So let me create a new Python file. And the name is 3IAM file handling. So the first thing is, as I said, we'll have to use open statement, and we have to put that in a variable. So basically we'll have to initialize an object with open statement, and it is available by default in Python. We do not have to import any module or any library. As the file is in current directory, so I'll just mention the name of the file, which is python orders_file.csv, and I'll open this file in read mode. So this is the read mode, and maybe this is the input file. I'll also open another file in output mode, which I will actually use later on. And the name of the file is Python output file, and I am opening it in write format. So I'll use it later on. So now what will I do is that I'll try to read the records of this particular file. Now if I use IP file dot, and then there are multiple methods available. So the first one is read, then you have read line, and then we have read lines. So what will I do? I will use read line, and let me print it because it would print the output. Let me execute this. As you can see, it has outputted only one record. And if I have to read all the lines one after the other, I'll have to run it in a loop while IP_file, then print read line. Now what would happen is it would keep on reading the line until the time it is true, and the moment it is blank or null, then it would break the loop. So now it is reading all the records, as you can see, and the number of records are, I think there are 1000 records in this particular file. So this is how we use IP read line. So we have to keep on reading the line one after the other. And this was not a nice way of doing it. So what we should do is we should use line equal to then value, and then try with line. So if line is true, that means if there's some value in this line, in this particular variable, then I'll print it, else I'll break out of the loop. And this is how you should use this particular loop. You should not use while IP file, because it will keep on running continuously. Now if I execute, it would show me only 1000 records that this file has, and after that it has broken. But of course this is not a nice way of reading file. I mean, you can do it, but once the file is read, you have to make sure that you close it also, so that after reading the file is closed using this particular method. Now this is one way, and the other way is read lines. In that case, what would happen? So I can use this lines equal to IP file dot read lines, and let me print the lines variable. It should be of type list, by the way. Let's print the data type also, and let me execute this. So as you can see, the lines is of type list, and it has provided all the records in one list. So if you have to print the line, you know what to do. We'll have to use a for loop. So because it is a list, all the elements would be shown one after the other. So now as you can see, it is giving us the same output. Now should we use this particular statement or this particular statement? It depends on how big the file is, because eventually the records would be stored in memory. But typically you will not use Python in data engineering directly. You can use file handling for doing some testing, like creating streaming data, etc., on similar lines. But if you are using or reading files in data engineering, typically the size of the files would be pretty big and would use frameworks like PySpark or Pandas or Flink or anything of that sort to read those files. So this is the first statement that is used. Then we have similar statement like with. Now the difference between open and with is that in with we do not have to worry about closing the file, and once all the records are read, the file would be automatically closed. So it takes care of the closing of files automatically. We do not have to close it. So as a best practice, you should always use the with statement to read files. As the files are closed automatically, those are released automatically also when the operations are done. Now, what are the various statements? The first one is, of course, with statement. As you can see, the open statement remains the same. We are using the with statement along with open statement. So you're opening the file, and this is the name of the file, and this is the mode, and this is the variable where the pointer would be stored. So in the previous case, we used IP underscore file equal to open. In this case, that IP underscore file is actually this input underscore file. Now once you do that, we can use this read method. Again, in case of read method, the records are read as string, or else you can use the read lines, wherein all the lines are read in a list. And of course, after that, we can loop over using for statement. Now let us try this out also. So what will I do? I'll use the with statement, and the open statement has to be used. So along with the with statement, I'll have to use the open statement also, and I'll have to pass the name of the file and the mode, and it has to be named something. So I'll name it as input file. I did not show you the writing of file. I'll show you that shortly. The file has been opened, and we can use this input file dot read. So what would happen here is that the lines would be read one after the other, but we should not do it. We should put it in maybe lines, and instead of read, I would use read lines, and that's it. Nothing else has to be done. And if I execute this, it will show me the same output. As you can see, the records have been shown to me using this with statement. I could have used the read statement also, but I tend not to use the read statement because for that I'll have to use another loop like this, which is a complex loop. So instead of that, I use the read lines always. So this is how we can use a with statement to read a file. Now let me show you the open statement and use the open statement and then write a file also. So I had written these two lines of codes. The first one is opening an input file in read format, and this is the output file in write format. The file is not present here. There are other modes also available like append, etc. And you can definitely use those modes as well. Now what will I do is that I'll be reading the lines using the read lines, and then I'll use the for statement, and of course after reading I'll have to close it. So these are the records. Now what will I do is I'll have to get the first 0th element, and then the third element, and then maybe the fifth element. These are the three things that I want. Now how do I get that? I can use a function called split, and it is a string function. Now whenever we read the records, the record is basically a string. This is an entire string. So I can split it using comma, and actually what would happen here is that after I split, all of this would become a list element. So as you can see, I have split using comma, and all of these are being considered as individual elements. So I will get the 0th element, then the third element, and the sixth element. So which is basically the order ID, order date, and order price. So I will write these records in the output file. So how do I do that? So we have that output file, and I can use output file dot write, and here I'll have to pass the data, and data would be equal to concatenation of all these three using comma, because this is going to be a CSV file. And let me execute this now. I'll have to close both the files, by the way. So the input file is being closed, and I'll close the output file also. So I'll have to pass data here. So that's why it is giving error. So now it has printed and the file, output file should be created. So as you can see, the output file has been created and it has printed, but everything has been appended one after the other, which should not be the case. And I did not want this. So what will I do is that I will go ahead and write this file again, and I'll have to concatenate a new line also. So let's execute this now and let's see the output file again. So now as you can see, new line meaning enter. So I have only 3 records: order ID, order date, and order total price. So this is how we write using the open statement. So of course we actually need to write using the with statement also, and we'll do the same for with statement as well. So this is the with open as input file. So here I'm writing the data as is. So what am I doing here is that first I'm opening the input file, then I'm reading all the lines which are done, then I'm opening the output file. Note the indentation. The indentation has to be correct, otherwise Python will give you error. After that, I'm reading the lines one by one and I'm putting the record in the data, and then I'm writing the output file with data. And the name of the output file is Python orders out file. So .csv. So let me go ahead and execute this. I'm getting an error because I have opened the file in read mode and the file is not present. So I'll open it in write mode, and these are the various formats that you can try. Now if I execute this, everything is done and the out file has been created also, and if I open, the records are as is. Of course I did not do any filtration or any column selection, that's why all the records are written as is. And this is how we can use both open statement and with statement to write files.